sunshine. I realize I am in sunshine. The skies are turning blue. Would you like to go to the top of sunshine?
Welcome to another video of Accept Truth with Joy. In this video I want to talk about the notion that I believe that God is not a deceiver or a cheater. I believe that He understands and lives in perfect harmony with natural laws. And so I don't, at least in my mind, I can't envision a God that is trying to deceive me or fool me in some way. And so I believe that the truth that He tries to transmit through all of the ways that I talked about in a previous video about how we learn truth, I believe that that information, by and large, can't come from a source that's trying to deceive us about the reality of that truth. So let me explain further with an example. There are these things called copyright traps. So this is done, for example, in like dictionaries and encyclopedias, where they'll add extra words that don't mean anything with definitions that are, falsified. It's all made up. And they do that so that if someone tries to copy their work, then in a court of law, that falsified entry becomes really powerful in a court of law to show, look, you copied this and therefore you infringed on copyrights. It's also done in map making, and where they will make up towns or these streets called trap streets, and therefore if someone tries to copy that map and you copy it with that falsified, that made up street or town, then again in a court of law that's really strong evidence that that was copied. I also think about this like as an instructor, right? I always tell my students, what's more powerful evidence of students that are cheating? Is it students that get the right answer in the right way on an exam? Or is it students that get the wrong answer in the exact same way on an exam? Right? And of course, it's students who get the wrong answer in the exact same way. Because I expect them to get the right answer, and maybe even they would, write out a similar kind of an explanation, because that's what we talked about in class and we explained it. But if I get word for word, essentially copied answers that are completely wrong, then that's a really good piece of evidence, right, for to me to go and argue that students are copying off each other, right? They're cheating. So why am I talking about this? Well, I don't think that God is going to try to plant evidence on this earth to make it look like He cheated, that He copied things, and to make it look like it was actually an evolutionary process of creation, when in reality maybe it was some, kind of the young earth creationist magic wand God bringing species into existence out of nothing. And so when I look at things like the story of vitamin C, so let's talk about this. Vitamin C, obviously, is ascorbic acid, and it can be produced in the bodies of many, many mammals and plants and animals and fungi. But in animals, this is the pathway. Now, this doesn't matter that you know all this detail. What you should know is that though these are genes, and those genes need to be functioning in order for this pathway to work so that you can go from sugar, glucose, all the way down and make ascorbic acid, vitamin C. And if you're a mammal that has all of those genes in place, you don't need to be eating a ton of fruit to get your vitamin C, okay? And therefore you don't end up getting sick with diseases like scurvy. However, if you are a mammal that does not have this pathway intact, so like let's say one of these genes becomes inactive or gets a mutation on it where it no longer functions, then you can't produce vitamin C. So you would need to then consume in your diet vitamin C by mostly by eating, like the fruits and vegetables, especially citrus fruits. And this is why, for example, a long time ago, if you were sailing on ships, they would bring lime juice with them, and they would drink the lime juice, and that would prevent them from getting scurvy. And that's also why they were called limeys, right? These sailors were called limeys. Well, it turns out in evolutionary history that about 63 million years ago, a mutation or hit, and then other mutations continued to hit on a gene right here at the end of this pathway called the Gullo gene. And this gene became inactive for all of the New World monkeys, Old World monkeys, apes, and of course us. Whereas the other mammals, and like the lemurs and the lorises and the tarsiers, they have an active Gullo gene. So they do not need to consume a ton of fruit to get their vitamin C. They can produce it in their bodies. Now what's interesting though is if you look at the details of the gene that's in all of us and the humans and chimps, and you compare that to another mammal that has that gene that functions like a rat, you can go in and find that there are mutations, but you find really interesting mutations like this one where there's a deletion. And deletions are really bad news in protein coding genes. They can really mess things up big time. And it's mutations like that can turn off a gene from one generation to the next, absolutely turn off a gene. And that's essentially what happened here. And more mutations have accumulated over time because once a gene gets turned off, then it's no longer being seen by evolution, and so mutations can accumulate as well throughout time. And you can actually use the Gullo gene to see how mutations have accumulated, where humans and chimps share more things in common than the other great apes as well. So it's really a fascinating story all around. But coming back to the idea of God is not a deceiver, why would God make it look like, in not just this example of the Gullo gene, but in thousands and thousands of genes in our bodies? Why would he make it look like there have been copied mistakes? To make it look like there's plagiarism going on, right? As if he's some great plagiarizer. I can't follow that logic. That doesn't make sense to me. I don't think God is trying to deceive us with all of the evidence of evolution, all of the fossil record, all of the other evidences that exist. That just doesn't make sense to me. Let me share one more example. I'm sure that most of you know that we have 46 chromosomes, right? We have 22 autosomes. This is a karyotype, and so these are like actual pictures of chromosomes, and they've stained them so that they have these banding patterns, and that represents the underlying genetic code. It has to do with the A's, G's, C's, and T's. And then they've cut them out and lined them together so that the chromosome 1 from mom and chromosome 1 from dad are right next to each other, and then chromosome 2 and chromosome 2 from mom and chromosome 2 from dad are right next to each other. So this is not what it looks like inside the cell, but a lot of things have been done to make this a visual karyotype of what the chromosomes look like in a human cell, okay? So you can see that the longest ones are 1, 2, 3, and the shortest ones are 21, 22. And then you have, this is a female because she has 2 X chromosomes. If it were a male, it would have 1 X and 1 Y chromosome. So we have a total of 46. Do you know how many total chromosomes the rest of the great apes have? You might pause this real quick and Google it just so that you can go and figure this out on your own. But it turns out that the rest of the great apes all have 48 chromosomes. Now think about that for a second. We've got 46 and they've all got 48. So what would be the most likely condition of the ancestral, this common ancestor to all of these organisms? Probably had 48 chromosomes as well, right? That would make the most sense. That's the most parsimonious solution. Well, so the question then becomes, what happened along the lineage leading to humans? Okay, if humans did indeed evolve from a common ancestor with chimpanzees, then something must have happened to those 2 chromosomes. What happened to those 2 chromosomes? Well, one of the things you can do is line up, go to the rest of these organisms and get their karyotypes. So here we can see all of them lined up with the humans first, and then the chimpanzees, and then gorilla, and then orangutan, right? So this would be the human, chimpanzee, gorilla, and orangutan. And it turns out that when you start to look at all of the pairs, you find a really interesting pattern. All of them have it the same, except for all of a sudden there's a few things that are missing. But let's focus on this second pair right here. Right here. Notice that the human one is stuck together really, really long, but the other ones are are two smaller ones that are lined up next to each other. Now, it's kind of hard to tell on this, so I'm going to use a cartoon. So I'm going to take this one part from chromosome 2 and then from the human and chimpanzee, and the human and chimpanzee from chromosome 3. I'm just going to make a cartoon out of it like this. If you could look at the details of the banding pattern, in fact, you can even zoom in because we've sequenced all of the genes and all of the DNA across all of these chromosomes. You can go down and you can see that it's the exact same genetic code, or 99% similar genetic code all the way down these chromosomes. And so it turns out that this smaller chromosome chimpanzee 2, and we put a little p on it, 2p, matches up with the top of the human chromosome 2. And then this other smaller chromosome 2q matches up with the bottom part of human chromosome 2. Now in human chromosome 3 and chimpanzee chromosome 3, they're basically the same size and they have all the same genes and all the same orders. Okay, essentially the same, 99% the same. But here we needed to grab two smaller chromosomes and put them together to make the one larger human chromosome. So think about that. What happened then? What happened was back here, along this lineage, chromosomes fused. And this happens a lot in evolution. Also, chromosomes can fission, which means they break apart. But in this case, you go from 48 total chromosomes to 46 chromosomes through fusions. And that's how you explain it. So there wasn't a loss of DNA in any case. There wasn't a loss of chromosomes. There wasn't a loss of genes. We still have all the same genes. We still have all the same DNA. We just now have the DNA arranged on one long chromosome instead of the two shorter ones. Now, again, why would God make it look like it's evolution if it's not? If it's all the same genes, why have 48 in the rest of the great apes and 46 in the humans? I mean, these things just don't make sense except in the light of evolution. So evolution is the best explanation to I think, explain these things that we see. And I've just given you a couple cases today. I could go more and more and more. There's plenty of this to go around. And so I think the best explanation is that God uses evolution to bring about his purposes, but he simply just obeys and lives within perfect harmony all the natural laws. And one of those laws is evolution.
Sunshine with me. The doors are open, the skies are too. Sunshine is coming in for me and you. Sunshine.